From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. I'm Jason Tenori, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Yo, Dr. Jason here, Dental Lighthouse Podcast. It is a very, very cold Tuesday morning in upstate New York. And I don't normally do recordings on Tuesday, but I had a coaching call yesterday that I'll unpack with you guys here in a little bit. And the principles that we talked about are so relevant to my everyday life, both as a entrepreneur and as a parent. And I just felt like I needed to get these musings out of my head and out to you guys. And I have no idea when this podcast will drop, but most likely a few days before our servant leadership course, which starts on April 3rd. So this is kind of like a last opportunity for you to be like, okay, this message makes sense to me. That's the first thing you need to ask yourself. And then the second thing would be, am I dialed in, right? Like we talked about those 30 leadership questions over the last couple of weeks, am I able to answer those properly? And if you hear this message and you're like, oh yeah, thanks for backing up what we're already doing, Jason, then you're in a good place. But if what I'm about to say is like a little bit of a head scratcher, or you think to yourself, yeah, that makes sense, why don't we approach it this way? Then I would encourage you to look into and register for our servant leadership course. So this is, again, assuming that there's still room. We're trying to limit it to 25 offices just in an effort to have engaging conversation in the Q&A. But anyways, so I had a one-on-one call yesterday with a young lady, she's about 40, which is young. I don't want anyone hating on me. And I have a history with her. She was a coaching client of mine in another group that I used to coach for. She's since left that group and joined our mastermind. And then more recently, because she's got a lot of things on her plate, she's moving offices, she's expanding. She engaged me to do some more one-on-one coaching. And I'm so excited to help her. She's such a good egg, huge heart. And I know she's going to ultimately kill it. And she's going to go from good to great. So yesterday was actually our second one-on-one call. And what we typically do on these one-on-one calls after we talk about any fires that need to be put out is we tackle the accountabilities or the action items from the meeting before, and everything's documented, so there's nowhere to hide. Some people love that level of accountability. Some people don't. But anyways, one of her accountabilities from 2 weeks ago was to set up a assistant checklist system for the end of the day in an effort to better communicate to the assistant team what needs to be done, what the priorities are, all that stuff. So we unpacked all of that stuff on that first call. So when we were meeting yesterday and we went over the accountabilities, she said, I'm struggling with this particular one. And I'm not going to unpack the entire situation, but basically what she was saying is, I created the checklist. On the checklist, it said, fully stock your rooms before you leave for the day. It makes sense, right? Like, I understand what that means. You understand what that means. But one of the things that we talk a lot about on this podcast and the servant leadership course and my coaching calls is removing all ambiguity and trying to make it as binary or as black and white as possible. So when we unpacked her frustration, she said, yep, they checked the box. They sent it to me. I just assumed it was done the right way. And then I realized it wasn't. And I'm like, well, how did you realize it wasn't? Well, I got to work Monday morning. With my assistant, we went to cement a crown. And as my assistant reached for the cement, it wasn't in there. She had to get up and leave the room to go get cement from another room. Right. So that was the situation. And she was frustrated and she's like, I thought I did this the right way. They told me they did it the right way. Um, but here we are. So I, I I equated it to a parenting situation, and I do this a lot. And maybe some of you guys find value in this. Maybe some of you guys that aren't parents don't. But I think the messaging is applicable to no, independent of your situation, right? So I have five kids, 24 down to 15, and as much as you may laugh at me, we are a checklist whiteboard family. Each person has a set of accountabilities, of responsibilities that they need to own. And we don't micromanage them, but we do periodic audits, for lack of a better term, to make sure that what they have agreed upon, they're actually doing, and they're doing it at the level that we expect. So the situation I unpacked yesterday with this coaching client, excuse me, was um, teaching my boys to clean their room, right? So it's one thing for me to put on a checklist, clean your room by the end of the day, right? At least I time stamped it by the end of the day or before you go to bed, right? So you could make the argument that this is on my boys' end of day checklist. So they were continually checking it and, clean my room, check, clean my room, check, clean my room, check. And then after 3 or 4 days, I went upstairs to verify or to audit if they, in fact, were cleaning their room, or if they were misleading me or lying to me, right? Which I hope was not the case. So I walked into their room and it was a mess. And again, mess is a subjective term, right? So when I looked at the room, I said, wow, this is not what I would consider clean. So I called the boys right upstairs. I have twin boys that are 15. They were like 12 at the time or 13 at the time. And I was like, guys, you have been checking the box that you're cleaning your room, but it's clearly not clean. And really, with a innocent look in their face, they were like, what do you mean it's not clean? And I'm like, well, look, this drawer's got, unfolded clothes in it, and you have a pile of laundry over there. And I certainly wouldn't consider this being a properly made bed. And they're like, oh, okay. So how do we handle this? And I said, you know what? This is on me. Extreme ownership. So what I'm going to do is clean your room right now. And I'm going to spend an hour getting this thing to what I consider the standard of clean. And I will then take a video of this clean room. I will take photographs of this room. And now we have absolute clarity on what the standard is. And as receptive as 12 and 13-year-old boys at the time could be, they were very appreciative of that because I removed all the ambiguity of what a clean room is. And once I set the standard, once I let them know this is what I mean by clean room, the system just took care of itself. So I hung up things in the closet the way I wanted it. I folded things and put them in the drawers and took photographs. I took a photograph of what I consider a well-made bed. I videoed the floor and communicated how nothing's on the floor. I communicated what I want the laundry basket to look like and all of the things, right? So I removed all the ambiguity in terms of what I'm expecting. So I shared that with this coaching client and I said, look, here's the deal. We always need to explain what, we always need to explain how, and we always need to explain why. So in this particular situation, in terms of this dental assistant system, what is the what, right? So the what is a fully stocked room at the end of the day. Okay. That's clear. What about the how, right? Um, how are we supposed to do this? Or said another way, what does fully stocked mean? So I encouraged this particular person to, with her assistant team, to decide what fully stocked means and literally take photographs of each drawer. Excuse me. You could do the same thing with like, okay, what does it mean to set up a room for endo? What does it mean to completely turn over a room? What does it mean to set up a room for a limited exam? Like it doesn't matter what the task is, right? In this particular situation, it's fully stocking a room. So making sure that they understand that this is what fully stocked means in reference to gloves. This is what fully stocked means in reference to disposable cups. This is what stock means in terms of the water bottle on the chair. This is what fully stocked means in terms of all of the assistant side supplies, the doctor side supplies. You know, you're in control of like how you want this room to be stocked, but you have to communicate that with a ton of clarity to your assistant team. And ideally, you come up with this with your assistant team, and then you either photograph or video or do what have to do to make sure that the current team understands how you want the room stocked, and more importantly, the future team. So you're creating an SOP. So when someone comes on board, when a new employee comes on board, you can easily say, here is our documented system with how we stock the room. Because if you hire an experienced assistant from another office, I can guarantee you, and you don't give them the onboarding and the mentorship of what you decide is a fully stocked room, then they're going to stock the room how they know how based on their previous lived experience. So we've talked about what, stocking the room. We've talked about how, giving examples of what we've decided we want a stock room to look like. Now we got to talk about the why, right? In every situation, you have to go back to the why. Things will not land from a servant leadership perspective, which is based in influence and authority. Things will not land unless you over communicate the why. And the why in this situation is not because I said so with your dental assistants. Just like when I set up the system with my boys to clean the room, the why was not because I said so. With my boys, the why was because I'm trying to raise young adults that develop great habits and that understand that one of the first things that you need to do on a regular basis is to take care of your room, to develop the habit and to be surrounded with a situation that's not full of clutter and how it relates to the mind and what have you. Now, they can choose to hear that message or not. They can choose to agree with that message or not. Now, again, when we're talking about 12 and 13-year-old boys, I really don't care, right? But I've communicated a sincere why, and they can either agree with it or not. When it comes to the situation in the dental office, what is the why for making sure rooms are fully stocked? So we just unpacked why it was frustrating for the doctor. She went to deliver a crown and reached for the assistant reached for the cement. The cement wasn't there. So the assistant had to get up and go to the next room, grab the cement, and then come back. So the reason, the why that we fully stock rooms is because when we don't, it negatively affects the patient experience. So what do I mean by that? Well, appointments have to be longer than they were supposed to be. We look incompetent in front of the patient because the assistant has to get up and leave the room 2 or 3 times. We're asking the patient to pay a significant amount of money for a procedure, yet when they actually take a step back and look at how the appointment's going, it just screams incompetence or lack of preparation. And anytime we sow a doubt in the patient's mind that they're getting the absolute best quality and customer centric service, then it's doing us harm. You know, you could even relate it to, well, maybe now that patient is going to be less likely to refer a friend. So there's lots of consequences that come from the result of not having a fully stocked room. Now, you can even multiply this by an hour later when the doctor goes into that other room to deliver a crown. The cement's not there. Why? Because an hour ago, we had to grab the cement out of that particular drawer and bring it to the room that we were currently in. So you could make this argument on basically every task that you are asking your team to do. And I would argue that if you can't find a serious consequence to be associated with the task, then the task is probably all not that important to begin with. So a couple other things that I'm working through with this particular client is a definitive lab check-in protocol, right? It's a very easy system. You have to communicate what we're talking about as far as the system. You have to communicate how we do it, how we make sure that lab cases are checked in and verified before the patient's appointment. And then we have to talk about why. Why is this important? Why do we have to create this system? Again, there's been situations where the patient gets in the room, they have their temporary crown removed, the assistant removes the temporary the prep. Maybe we even had to get the patient numb. The doctor goes to reach for the crown, and wouldn't you know it, it's not there. So the assistant gets up. She has to go to the area of the office where we keep all the lab cases, and she spends 10 minutes looking for it. And she comes to the realization of, oh, it's not there. So then she calls the lab, and long story short, it turns out that the scan that you took 2 weeks ago never got sent, whatever the reason is, right? So what are the consequences of this? Well, we just wasted an hour of chair time. So the business is losing money. We look so incompetent in front of the patient. They had to get anesthetized. They had to take time off from work. They had to do all of these things to only have the temporary crown put back on and rescheduled for 2 weeks from now. I mean, it screams incompetence. So this is why we need to have a system of lab case check-in review, and we need to give clarity on exactly what the system is and why we have the system in place. So it's not rocket science, right? But from my perspective, it's over communicating. This is what we need. This is how we do it. And this is why we do it. And if you can incorporate whoever you're dealing with into the system development, then you're going to get a little bit more buy-in. Just like when I was cleaning the boys' room, we did it together. I said, okay, this is what I want here. This is what I want there. What are your ideas on what should be in the hamper? What should be on the floor? Stuff like that. Same thing with your dental team. Like when you realize that there is a system flaw or a missing system, this is an opportunity, right? What a great opportunity to fix the problem, to grow, and then ultimately be better than you were yesterday. Just make sure that you're clear about what, you're clear about how, and most importantly, you're clear about why. Simple, just not easy. So if this message resonates with you guys, and assuming we have room left in the servant leadership course, go to dentallighthouse.com and be like, you know what? Yeah, if Jason's going to talk about stuff like this for 8 hours over, actually probably closer to 10 hours over 8 weeks, then I'm on board. I would love for you as a founder, owner, dentist, and some of your key leads to join us. It's our 4th year doing the course. We cover everything from vision, core values, accountability chart, roles and responsibilities, checklists, servant leadership principles, courage, character, love, meeting cadences, scorecards, you name it. There's a lot of stuff. All right, guys. Hope this resonates with you. Reach out to me. If you need anything, I can be reached at thedentallighthouse.com. My cell phone and email address are there. And I hope to talk to you soon. Love you.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tenori, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.